good day, Lionhearts. It's your old pal, Jordan the Lion. How are you all doing today? I hope you said great. You know, I want to preface it again by saying I don't think that anyone is entitled to an autograph, a photo, just because someone chooses to make their living in the public doesn't mean that they don't deserve free time, their own time. So I'm only going to be telling stories of, I'm going to be telling my encounters, but I'm not going to tell stories about like paid meeting and greets or things like that, because I kind of feel like people are expected to be on good behavior then. But I'm just going to tell you what my interaction with them was in whatever way it was, and just, kind of let you know how it can be if you meet somebody that it's a celebrity, you may not know what to expect. Justin Bieber, and it's at the height of Justin Bieber's career. At this time, he was constantly being reported on TV and in the papers as being like just a troublemaker, a pain, just really you didn't read a whole lot nice about him. And I had a job at the time where I would check in paid audience for TV shows. And one of the shows was making its pilot episode. It was gonna be a live pilot that they had Ryan Seacrest hosting. I don't even remember the name of it because it didn't last. It was something that they had originally planned. If it worked, they were gonna try and do it like every Thursday live at like 4 p.m. And I was like, that's such a weird time or whatever. But anyway, I was helping check people in. They said, hey, we're short on people. Can you sit in one of the seats? So I'm like, yeah, that's fine. So I sit in one of the seats and I'm sitting with a girl that I was friends with. And she was an actress. She was doing this like for side money or whatever. So we're sitting there and this show starts filming, and what they end up doing is they tell this story of this girl who had been like made fun of in school her whole life because she had something, I don't remember what was wrong with her or what people perceived to be wrong with her, but she had this amazing attachment and love for Justin Bieber, and she wanted Justin Bieber to take her to her school dance. And so they had done this story about Justin Bieber, about her having this love for him, writing him a letter and everything. And then they had filmed this this thing where he shows up and surprises her at her house and ends up taking her to the dance. And he's so nice to her in the video. I mean, he's just like not just being nice, but like he cares. He's asking her questions. He's listening to her. He's responding to her. Like he's really human in a time that he was not being portrayed as being very human. And so all of a sudden, as like the way they filmed this show is like everybody in the audience was in the dark and they would have a big screen. So they were showing what they had already filmed up there. They're showing all this stuff. And all of a sudden there was an empty seat in front of me. Like there was somebody sitting there, somebody that worked for the show ran out, got this person, took them back, and then brought somebody else in to sit in this empty seat right in front of us. And so they, I'm trying to remember how exactly they wrapped it up, but they basically show him taking her to the dance and everything. And then they cut to commercial. And my friend and I, the girl sitting next to me, we start talking about the show. And I'm going, this is interesting that they do this stuff. But, I said, I forget what it was. We weren't even talking about his segment per se. We're actually talking about something that happened before it. And as she and I talk about it, the guy in front of us turns around as Justin Bieber. They had planted Justin Bieber in the crowd, and he starts talking to us about whatever I don't even think we were talking about the show per se. It was something else, but he overheard what we were talking about. And so for the next 5 minutes, the three of us had like a real conversation about just whatever it was. And I don't remember it, but I remember then they like flash the lights or whatever, they go back, and the girl and I look at each other and we're like, wow, what a nice dude. Like, what a cool dude, right? So then they bring out the family that had been up there on the screen. And the family's, they're saying like, so how's everything going now? Oh, it's great. She's doing better. She's got more confidence now. That just really changed our life. And Justin's even called her since and all this. And they said, well, we actually have a surprise for you. And Justin stands up and goes out of the crowd and gives her a big hug and, all this stuff. And you're just like, wow. I mean, I remember just going like, that I would probably thought that would have been totally like fake and everything if he wouldn't have turned around and joined our conversation and was so like, he was talking to us like, I hate to say real, but when somebody's as big and as elevated as he was at that time, I would have just kind of expected him to have kind of a condescending tone or kind of be like looking us up and down, you know. I don't know. I don't know what I thought, but I guess that's, as someone who's not famous, I guess that's what we go through, is like, you know, what are they thinking about us? But he was as nice as could be, so I don't have a bad word. Anytime anybody makes a Justin Bieber joke, I don't partake in it, because I actually think the dude is a pretty level-headed, cool guy when I met him. So now let's get to somebody who actually probably tops my last video where I talked about how big of a jerk I thought Manny Ramirez was. This guy actually turned out to be an even bigger jerk, to where I would have to say, I have to use the word a dick. He was an absolute dick. And you wouldn't have thought that this would have happened based off of the fact that we were being introduced by a common friend. But it was Slim Jim Phantom of the Stray Cats. I used to go when I was younger, when I first moved to Hollywood. He had a club on Sunset Strip called the Cat Club, and he used to perform a small band with Tracy Guns and Gilby Clarke, and they would have guest stars like Brian May, Slash. People would come various weeks and sit in. Janie Lane would pop up there and sing or whatever, and I used to go to those. And one of the guys who was in the band started watching my channel and contacted me, like commented or something. I said, hey, I used to see you play in that band with Slim Jim and all those guys. And he's like, no way, really? So we kind of became friends, and we hadn't seen each other. I mean, I hadn't seen him since those days. So he said, hey, I'm booking this winery, and I got a bunch of these guys to do like an all-star jam. They're gonna do like an all-star night. And he says it's gonna, you know, he says like Slim Jim's gonna be there, and he says it's gonna be members of Kiss and Guns N' Roses, because he had Teddy Andreadis on keyboards, and you know, he just had various people that he said was gonna be there. So he asked me if I wanted to go. I said sure. So as I'm there, he introduces me to like Eric Singer and Ryan Roxy and Skunk Baxter and people like that, and they were all really cool. And this friend of mine goes, dude, we gotta go talk to Slim Jim about him and you getting together and doing a video on the Cat Club. I go, that's cool. I said, you know, I would love to do that. I said I was gonna make one anyway, just the way I do videos, where I was just gonna go to the actual location, talk about my stories and what I experienced there. But I was like, I would love to have him tell how it all got started and everything. So he goes, yeah, we'll talk to him about it. I'm sure it'll be cool. So at some point, Slim Jim's with his girlfriend, his dog, and he's over here. And so this friend of ours, mutual friend, brings me over. Goes, hey Jim, I want you to meet this friend of mine. He's got 11,000 subscribers on YouTube. That tells you how long ago that was, because we're at 300,000 now. But he said, yeah, he used to go to those Cat Club shows, and I'd love for you to like sit down and tell him like some Cat Club stories. And all of a sudden, Slim Jim blows up and goes, hey man, if I want to do something, I'll do it on my own. I don't need some kid, or I don't need anybody else to make videos or do podcasts. I'll do it on my own. You hear me? And our mutual friend goes like, well, you know, I just thought because he's already doing this stuff and he's got like, you know, you can do your own, but why not? He's got a platform already. Why not? And he jumps, he goes, hey man, I told you if I want to do a podcast, I'll do it on my own. Okay? Okay? Like just jumped all over him. I was just thinking to myself, screw you, man. Like, I know you don't know who I am, but I wasn't even the one asking. This was like, you know, but I just remember thinking, God, what an overreaction of like, you know, just being talked to by their own friend like that, for him to jump all over him. And I remember just like, maybe a week later, I did a live stream on this channel, and that friend that had invited me, that was there for it, everything jokingly said in the comments like, hey, what did you think of Slim Jim? Do you want to hang out with him again? Haha. And I was like, that guy was the biggest a-hole I think I've ever met. And I even said on that, I said, I think he just topped Manny Ramirez, because Manny Ramirez was just passive aggressively like looking past me and just ignoring me. This guy blew up on his friend for asking him a question about doing a video with me. I just thought that was like, what a jerk, you know? And I was like, whatever enjoyment I had out of their music, I still appreciate Brian Setzer, but I remember thinking he wouldn't talk to Ryan Roxy or Eric Singer or anybody else like that, but because he didn't know me and I wasn't like in his mind on his level, that's the way he was treating me. And I was pretty much right, because later on the day he did come up to Eric Singer, was like, hey, what size shirt you wear, man? I'll get you one of our hoodies and everything, and got him one eventually, so. So now let's talk about Rowdy Roddy Piper, the wrestler. I was a fan of Roddy Piper's from the time I saw They Live. When he was a wrestler before that, I was a Hulk Hogan guy, so Roddy was a bad guy. I didn't like Roddy. But then I saw They Live, and I really liked him. And then when he came back, when the NWO thing was going on, I became a big fan of him then as well. So when I was hanging out at the Comedy Store, there was like probably 3 or 4 years that the people at the Comedy Store just accepted me and they liked me. They knew I wasn't there to do stand-up or anything, but they still treated me like a comedian. They let me have comedian access. I could sit anywhere I wanted. I didn't have to pay to go in. And since I wasn't trying to like get anything out of anybody, I wasn't trying to get a gig out of anybody, people were pretty cool to me. And Roddy Piper was a past regular at the Comedy Store and would occasionally show up when his schedule allowed it. And I remember being at home and seeing people tweeting like, oh, Hot Rod's here tonight. I'm like, man, how do I keep missing him? So one night, one day I was booked to film as an extra in a U2 music video that they were gonna premiere at the Super Bowl. And we had filmed all day, and when it wrapped, I decided to go to the Comedy Store, and it seems like it was a Thursday night or a Wednesday night because it was super dead. And I go in there and a friend of mine was on stage, Matt Edgar, and it's like 2 people in the audience. And usually when it's something like that, somebody like me, they knew me well enough, they would let me ask them like some ridiculously stupid question from the crowd. And it was sometimes, because I knew the comics, it would kind of help send them down a new path of something they could riff on or be funny with. And so I said something, and the guy in front of me at the seat starts laughing. He's like 2 seats in front of me. And my friend on stage goes, oh, great. There's like 3 people in the audience, and Jordan's getting a bigger laugh than I am. Thanks a lot, Roddy. I realized Roddy Piper is the guy sitting 2 seats in front of me. So I get up and I walk over and I just whisper, I said, sir, I've wanted to meet you my whole life. Can I meet you before you leave? And he like goes like this, and he goes, as soon as my friend's done on stage, I'll come out and spend some time with you. So sure enough, we watched the rest of the set, and which I think it was only like 5 minutes left of it. And Roddy came out, and the first thing he did was he took his big Kevlar leather jacket off, said, turn around. And he put it on my shoulders. He goes, there, now you got a piece of WrestleMania on you. He goes, I've worn that in several WrestleManias. And then he grabs the jacket like kind of right up here, and he goes, it's also made of Kevlar because I've been stabbed twice. And that was my introduction to Roddy Piper. And Roddy Piper that night stood outside and talked to me for about 20 minutes. I remember him asking me all the questions. He was like, how old are you? And I tell him my age. He'd say, you found me through the cartoons, didn't you? Cartoons and lunchboxes, right? I said, yeah, actually. And like, so he said, every time I meet a kid that's your age, he said, you're my favorite age group, because he said, you found me when you believed everything, you know. And I was like, so we would talk and and then every time, you know, that I would come back to the Comedy Store and he's there, we would talk. So I don't even know how many times I got to hang out and have deep conversations. I had conversations where he told me he absolutely believed that They Live was a documentary warning all of us. We had conversations about where he told me about how Bob Zmuda and Andy Kaufman were waiting for him in their van out in the parking lot after one of his shows because they wanted to meet him so bad. And Andy told Roddy that he wanted to be a heel wrestler. And that they took Roddy in that van to the Comedy Store that night, and he told me about how Matt Mad Dog Vachon taught him how to get out of paying a bill in a diner, and how he was 100% convinced that the Hillside Stranglers had tried to lure him into a van and drink with them. I mean, every time you saw him, somehow a story would come out, but he was the closest thing to a prophet I ever knew. This guy, when he talked, he wasn't crazy. He wasn't trying to scare you, but he was telling you the truth that he had seen in life and on the road. And when he talked, there was just this, it was like a beam that you just listened, and he met, and I mean, there was like, I just remember always walking away going, I can't believe I know this guy. Like, he just made you think. He made you appreciate everything around you. I remember for years, he hated Mr. T. And then one day, it was after WrestleMania, and I see him there. And I go, Roddy, how was WrestleMania? And he said, puts his arm on my shoulder, and he says, I forgave Mr. T. I said, what happened? I said, you've been holding on to that for years. He said, I met his son. As a father, when I saw his son, I went up to his son. I said, is your dad a good dad? And he said, my dad's a great dad. He said, that's all it took for me. He said, I went up and shook Mr. T's hand, gave him a hug. You know, he said all is past, because he had told me before, like, he really did hate Mr. T, because he said he felt like Mr. T had no respect for the business and what they were doing, and just wanted to come in and make them look like idiots, throw them around, whatever. And he just said that was not going to happen when I was in the position I was to make him look good. That was not going to happen. And so he held a grudge about that. But Roddy let a lot of stuff go, and one of my favorite moments was coming to the Comedy Store one night, and there was no show in the main room. It was when the Comedy Store was very dead. And I went back to see if anybody was like hanging out back there smoking or doing anything. And I walk in, and Roddy Piper's up at the grand piano on the main room stage. And he's just sitting there playing this beautiful, haunting song. And afterward, I sat there and listened the whole time until he got up and walked away. And then I found him outside later, and I said, Roddy, I don't mean to be like that I was spying or anything, but I said, I came in, I heard some of your music. What were you playing? He said, I wrote that. He said, I learned how to play on that piano here. He said, I didn't know before. He said, I would come here, and at night I would just sit and pluck around. So I got to capture like a real moment in my head getting to see that. So Roddy Piper to me was one of the nicest, coolest people I ever met. And even times that I would show up and I would see him talking to like a guy and a girl, I knew what it was. It was somebody just like me that had said, Roddy, I was a fan of you growing up. And he legitimately loved to talk to his fans. Not because he wanted the attention, but he loved to see the way people lit up when they got to meet him. So he was truly a great guy. This is the Trailer Park Boys. I used to have a connection at Jimmy Kimmel Live, and I could go pretty much to Jimmy Kimmel Live and watch from the green room and from the side of the stage anybody that I wanted for that time. So I would always check and see who was going to be at Kimmel, and lo and behold, one day it was David Gilmour from Pink Floyd. He was doing a solo performance. So I asked if I could go, and my friend's like, yep, you can go. I got you in, but there's gonna be a lot of people there, so it's gonna be kind of crowded. So I show up at Kimmel for the show, and after the show is when they do the performances. So they lead me out to the stage outside, and I'm on the side stage, and David Gilmour starts performing, and it's pretty amazing. I have done this several times for several bands, Weezer, Motley Crue, I mean, you name it. I'd probably seen him there at that time over that 3-year span that I was doing this. And the guitar techs and stuff would always give you a guitar pick if you asked, no problem. I asked David Gilmour's guitar tech, and he says, you have a better chance of getting one of his kids than you have of getting one of these picks. And I was like, what the heck, man? That was weird. So then, you know, like, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes later, I see that same guy walk over to the stage manager, and he's talking to him. I see the stage manager look back at me, and I'm like, oh no. So eventually, like, after everything's said and done for the whole night, I went and talked to the stage manager. He goes, yeah, he came over and said, do you know this guy that just asked me for a guitar pick? I'm like, oh yeah, he's cool. He's a friend of ours and everything. They go, oh, well, my job is to make sure that none of these guitar picks get out of here and end up on eBay. So that's why he didn't give me a guitar pick or whatever. But as I was standing there off to the side, it started getting really crowded. More and more people from like Kimmel's staff and stuff started coming off to the side and watching. So I decided to walk out and go out to the crowd. Well, when I did that, the Trailer Park Boys had been on the show and they came walking out and they had seen me backstage. So they just followed me thinking that where I was going was the backstage area, and I ended up going out and watching it out there, out in the crowd. So they're like, I turn around, they're following right behind me, and I'm like, I kind of realized what I think had happened. And I go, were you looking for the side of the stage? He goes, yeah, but this is a better view anyway. This was Bubbles. I'm talking to Bubbles. So it's all three guys, Bubbles, Julian, Ricky. All three of them come walking out and everything. So together, we watched like the last couple of songs that David Gilmour is doing together. And then as soon as the songs are done, I look over at Bubbles and I go, hey man, is it cool if I get a photo with you? And he goes, he didn't have his glasses on. He goes, shit, yeah, man, hold on, let me get my glasses on so I'm in character. He puts them on and he goes, do you want me to go get all the guys? Because by that point, the other two kind of like started wandering kind of like off, and he goes, do you want me to get the other guys and be in the photo? I go, that'd be really cool if you don't mind. Yeah, of course. So he went and got him, and we took a photo together and everything. Then we went backstage. Bubbles had brought a guitar that he wanted David Gilmour to sound like. Oh my God, there's no way this is gonna happen. Like, sure enough, I couldn't believe it, but somehow he made it happen. I walk around, by this point, my friend that I knew, he was done working, so I was hanging out with him. But we walk around a corner and I see the three of them standing there talking to David Gilmour, and David Gilmour signing Bubbles' guitar. And Bubbles actually told me outside, he goes, you know, we got asked to do The Tonight Show and Kimmel, but when we saw that David Gilmour was here, we said we wanted to do Kimmel. So pretty cool. I wasn't a huge fan of the Trailer Park Boys at that point. A friend of mine was. But after that and how cool they were, I started watching the show and then I became a huge fan. So that was a lot of fun. Now another person that I met that was actually really cool at Kimmel, and this was before I had a connection there. Sometimes I would just see who was gonna perform, because Jimmy Kimmel would always post it on his Twitter who was gonna be on the show that night. So I knew what time they taped, and I saw Danny McBride, who at the time was Kenny Powers from Eastbound and Down. He was gonna be on the show, and my friend Breck and I were huge fans of Kenny Powers. So I said, hey, let's just go over there and see what happens. I'm gonna take a baseball, and my friend said, well, I'll just print off some photos and I'll go with you. Well, like the day before we go to this thing, I go to the Goodwill and they just happen to have two promotional things that had just come out. The show, the second season, it was the second or the third season of the show, hadn't come out yet. But HBO had put out promotional materials, and I bought two of these things, and he saw it, and he started laughing. He goes, oh my God, the things they put my face on. So he came over, took photos with us, signed everything we had. He signed this right here. And I actually had two of these, so he signed two of these, a baseball, and then took photos, and he said, hey guys, I promise you I'll be back out after I'm done. And a lot of times people, if they were on Kimmel, they would blow you off going in. They might sign for you on the way out, or they would say, I'll sign for you on the way out, and then they would have the usher person just like force them into a car so they didn't have to. But Danny McBride, to his credit, not only stopped and signed and talked to us for a little while before the show, but then again after the show, before he got in the SUV to leave, he came over and talked to us again and everything. So Danny McBride, super, super cool guy. And then speaking of great interactions, man, I've had 3 great interactions with, to speak of. I've met him several other times, but these were 3 times that really meant something to me. Chris Paul. Chris Paul's been, they call him the point god, one of the greatest point guards in NBA history. He's been on pretty much every team at this point, but you know, he ended up going to the Clippers. And I was a Clipper fan. I was a Blake Griffin fan. I do have Blake Griffin stories of me meeting him maybe for another video, but Chris Paul had agreed to come to the Clippers. They traded for him. And the Clippers had just been a down and out team for so long that when Blake Griffin came there, I said, hey, I was watching Blake Griffin in college with Oklahoma. I said, wherever he goes, I'm going to be a fan of that team. Well, just so happens he went to not only the Clippers, which was a really bad team that meant that you could get really cheap tickets, but it was also in my town in Los Angeles. And it also wasn't the Lakers because I wasn't a Laker fan. So Chris Paul coming there was a big deal. So I immediately ordered one of his jerseys. And within about a week of him agreeing to come to the Clippers and everything, Kimmel announced that he was going to be on the show. So I went over to the Kimmel taping, and there was nobody there. I mean, as far as waiting to meet Chris Paul, I don't think people even knew he was there. But I went over there, and I had stopped and bought a basketball, and the jersey I had bought I was wearing. And when he was done, he came walking out, and they tried to escort him to the car, and I just said, "Hey, Chris, can I get a photo with you maybe?" And he looks over and he goes, "Absolutely." He said, "Thank you for wearing my jersey. That means a lot to me." He goes, "What a welcome to LA you gave me." And I was like, super, like I didn't think of it that way, you know, because he had been on the same team his entire career up until now. So for him to leave was not necessarily a situation he knew whether he was going to be accepted or not. So right away, there I was. So he came out, took a photo with me, and I asked him to sign my basketball, and he said, "Do you want me to sign your jersey too, since I'm here?" So he signed my jersey, and then I'd say maybe 2 months later, the announcer for the Clippers, Ralph Lawler, was getting his star on the Walk of Fame. And I had a pair of Chris Paul's sneakers, like his Air Jordan shoes, that I had actually gotten at the Champs discount outlet for like $60. When they would bring in like a new generation of the shoe, they would send the old ones there and you could buy them for discount. So I had a nice pair, brand new pair, never been, you know, I'd worn them twice or 3 times, but they're really stiff and uncomfortable. So my girlfriend at the time knew that, and she, for Christmas, had gotten me a new pair. She got me like a newer version of what they had released, and they were far more comfortable. So I heard Ralph Lawler was gonna be doing his star ceremony. I just thought, you know what? There's a chance Chris Paul might be there. Who knows? He's very supportive of people. I'm gonna take that pair of shoes that hurt my feet when I wear them, and I'll see if I can get him to sign them. So sure enough, they do the thing. Ralph Lawler's there. Chris Paul does show up, and he is there. And afterward, he's walking around, and I go, "Chris, do you think I can get a signature?" And he looks over, sees me holding the shoes, and then looks down at my feet, sees that I'm wearing the other pair of shoes, and walks over and says, "Absolutely." And he says, "Thank you for wearing my shoes, my friend." He said, "I know a lot of people come out to get my autograph and stuff, but they don't actually support me by wearing the stuff." And he said, "I see you're wearing the shoes, so thank you." So he did that. He signed the other pair of shoes, which I'll show you right here. And then the pair that I was wearing, I wore to death, and then even bought a second pair of, which I will show you right here. These are the same style I was wearing that day when he saw me wearing them, so I loved them enough that I bought a second pair. And then maybe a year later, he was at the, what's it called? In Los Angeles, right there where the farmer's market is and everything. And he was gonna be at the tree lighting ceremony reading, 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. And so when he was there, I was wearing another pair of Chris Paul shoes and asked him to sign those as I was wearing them. He actually did. So 3 different times I've met him. When he saw that I was wearing his shoes, he was nice enough to either come over for a photo or something, especially when he saw that you were supporting him and not just trying to profit. So those are my experiences. Those are just some of my experiences meeting some of the famous people in Los Angeles. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you all next time, and goodbye.